This week on New to You, Love for Sale Part 2. Ujure, Meet the Fokins. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
one of your other hosts, Keith Vincent, and
your other host, Julian Cage, and special guest,
Adam Mater.
Welcome Adam!
Oh, shucks, guys. You didn't have to get this huge parade and pyrotechnics just for me. Oh, and the grapes lady from the viral video. Oh, guys, you shouldn't have to stomp grapes for me. Oh, she's only falling every time.
Proto memes, I love them.
Meta meme. The ultimate villain. Shoots green frog Pepe's.
What?
Hey, all right with that.
All right, buddy. All right.
Oh.
What if the alt-right takes the grape stomping lady and makes her their new mascot?
We won't be allowed to enjoy it.
As a lib, I would be triggered. Honestly, they should just take all our memes. It's like cultural
in all
scorched earth policy.
It really
It's
bothers
cultural
me that they've started doing
appropriation.
the thing with the OK sign.
No.
Is
Where
like
you hit someone in the balls if they...
Oh, that's a bad thing now?
No, so alt-right people are doing this thing, and it's dating back to like the KKK or something. And I'm just like, you can't take my AOK sign. I need that. How else am I supposed to say like nice pizza?
Trey KK.
What's that? I think
Trey KK.
there's something behind it for, but
We're running out of positive hand gestures. 'Cause
I know.
the thumbs up is hard, like pretty corny and dumb.
Well, thumbs up is okay until you're scuba diving, in which case you can't give the thumbs up because that means I got to go up because there's an emergency.
Oh.
That's when the AOK symbol comes in handy is when you're scuba diving.
Well, can you
For
still do the
Nazi treasure?
Have you seen the latest episode of V? One is that because I remember bringing that out for the new season that they made too, the new series.
The new V series, yeah.
Yeah, like there's lizards in V. Are you part of
the hang loose, the hang loose Hawaii one? I could
that
never
makes
pull that
people
off.
angry. Yeah,
It's
that's
been
not a good
modified,
look.
right?
It's
for-
cultural. It's a little cultural appropriation.
Yeah, exactly.
What about live long and prosper?
That's fine.
Yeah, but I mean,
Is
is
that
that really what you're gonna
ableist?
do?
I don't know.
Are you gonna
Like a penguin?
Danny DeVito penguin?
Yeah.
Oswald
Cobblepot.
Yeah.
Mayor Cobblepot.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, fortunately, there's less and less positive news that you need to make a hand gesture.
Oh,
that's
right. Well, huge.
Jazz hands, maybe? Maybe we could start trying to get jazz hands going.
Hey, Keith, I got that report for you.
You can't see this, folks, but he's making jazz hands. It's making me very happy.
I know.
Okay.
But it just makes me think Al Jolson, and so that's like it already has bad connotations.
Don't get me started.
Can you just put your fist in your mouth?
Listen.
So we've been doing Love for Sale so far.
Yeah.
As you can tell from our banter.
Yeah. So last week, Keith, you were up with Tecumseh Valley, the Town Van Zandt track. And this week, Julian's going to take it away.
Ja, aantal klanten die we gehad hebben, dat is niet meer te tellen. Ik zou het echt niet kunnen tellen, dat is ontelbaar. Echt neuken deden we natuurlijk nooit zoveel. Behalve als ze er goed voor betaalden.
Yeah, I'm going to take away with Oorhoorn, the Dutch title for the 2011 documentary titled Here in the States, Meet the Fokins, named after its lead characters, Louise and Martine Fokins, who are identical twins in their late 60s, who were for 50 years working as sex workers in Amsterdam. And so
Red Light District.
it was directed by Rob Schroeder and Gabrielle Provas. And it's an observational doc, so, kind of fly on the wall type, they're just following them around with the cameras. There's no narration or anything like that. So you're really just kind of following them through their day to day, and they sometimes talk to the camera about their experiences. And
There are no like slowly panning photographs or letters or anything.
Not
like
till,
that.
not
a
till
little bit.
later.
There-
Yeah.
there's
Dear Ma, the war is hard.
there's a little bit, but it's
My dearest Clarabelle.
it's not narrative. And like a lot of that style of documentary, it's you kind of get a good sense of who they are, but you're a little fuzzy on the kind of their backstory and what's really happening in some of the scenes,
Yeah.
which is the unfortunate part. But I think what makes it work is that they're really endearing characters. So there are these two very like upbeat. They wear very colorful, matching clothing. And and they really look like kind of sweet grandmas, and so when you mix that with sex worker, it's just kind of strange.
It's just a
Yeah.
neat juxtaposition.
I mean, I think what's interesting about it is it allows you to look at sex workers without it being sexy at all. You know what I mean? So it kind of allows you to be kind of look at it more objectively. I was surprised too that the film got a lot of access. You even see, so I guess I should back up a little bit. So I think when the film was shot, they were 69.
That was
And
2012.
Yeah, that was
Nice.
I think it was 2011. I think it was released here in 2012.
The
something like
sex number.
Sexy Dad. And there are two identical sisters.
I don't like
So they are Louise and Martine. So one of them had retired 2 years prior. That's Louise, even though she was the first one to get in the business. And Martine was still working because I think actually that's not clear from the film, but she was still working part-time. Or she doesn't have retirement money, and her government checks or whatever aren't enough to sustain her. So she still has to work a couple days a week, and she still manages to get work, and even though she looks like an old grandma, so they don't really. Again, they kind of what the filmmakers intended. They kind of didn't want to make another like sad story. They wanted because I think there is definitely tragedy and sadness in their backstory, but they kind of ended up over the course of their lives kind of owning it and taking control of their lives and their careers. So they still deal with a lot of the stigma that is associated with prostitution or sex working. Even in Amsterdam, I thought maybe though, like because it was legalized and all this kind of stuff, I thought maybe
It has been for a long while.
yeah. Well, it's I thought it was longer, but it was actually in 2000 that it was truly
Oh,
legalized.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Was it just like a blind eye situation?
Just
Maybe-
like everybody knew about it.
Yeah,
but-
or maybe it just became illegal in a different sense. I'm not clear, but I just know that it's totally legal thing, and they started getting taxed and all that was in 2000.
Because they talked about how they had a brothel.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
in
So
the 80s and 90s or something.
yeah, so they ended up at some point. And again, this isn't really covered in the film. It's sort of it's alluded to a little bit, but I was through
you
interviews
kind
and
of have
stuff I
to
read.
piece it together.
Yeah, and I was able to get more of their backstory, and they ended up operating their own brothel, which they ran in sort of a informal trade union kind of way. Like it was it was much more fair than a lot of the other ones that were existing out there.
More
Having to
fair
shut-
to the workers.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it was actually in 2000 that they had to close it down because once it went legal, then there were all these tax issues. And on top of that, they just they didn't have they just didn't know how to work the system. They didn't have a lawyer, and they ended up kind of getting screwed out of the business. That was not a pun, no pun intended. And I think we're still dealing with tax issues because there's a scene where people are because Martine is still working. There's recurring scenes where it seems like a group comes to her, visits with her to try and help her to get out. And I think they're an organization that tries to help.
It seems, I was made pretty, I mean, I can go on about this after, but I was pretty uncomfortable. That's the one part that really made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The most insidious and gross kind of thing were the people who were there oh, we really love you. We want you out of the game. We'll take over for you and help you. It just seemed like they were recruiting for their religion and in this kind of weird,
Yeah, again,
it just didn't seem altruistic. It seemed
and again, I don't know where they're coming from. And that's another one where I wish the documentary give you a little more info as to who are these people, where are they coming from. So you just kind of have to, you get a sense of it. But you're right. I think they're definitely religiously based because there's always prayer at the end and so forth. But they do generally seem. I think their heart's in the right place, and I think they mean well. But I think you're right. It's not entirely it's a little like it may also made me feel a little uncomfortable because they're kind of pushy and
In a movie about like sex workers' everyday lives, that was the kind of uncomfortable part.
yeah.
Yeah, well, again, because like, I was uncomfortable because you have these younger people who they talk about like, I mean, again, sorry to divert too much,
No, no.
but these younger people like across the street who aren't speaking the language. One of the big issues with places like Amsterdam is that there are women who are brought in and kind of forced into the business. Like these women kind of allude that at a certain point they were forced into the business by their spouses or circumstance. And some of these women are just like basically they're part of the sex trade. These other younger women, and it's an industry that uses them. And so that's kind of skeevy and uncomfortable. At least these women had agency now in their older age. But then to see these people show up to remove that agency because they have the answers and like use their religion, like it just when the woman was like, "Nah, I'm not going to quit," like because her sister talked to her about like, "You do what you want to do." Like that was where that was like again them kind of like wiping their eyes clean and like maintaining their agency and like doing what they wanted, which is something that like all the other figures in this documentary seem to be either trying to take from them or lacking.
I wasn't as uncomfortable with them as Holt makes it out. I mean, they were coming on a little strong, a little bit, it seemed like. But I do believe that in real life, they would be kind of just saying, hey, there's an alternative if you want it kind of thing. We're here if you need.
Right, they were like her solution was I'm just gonna keep working, and they were like trying to offer her an alternative.
Yeah.
But her sister was kind of like, well, what's their agenda, and also like, what like how is that gonna work? Like she was just skeptical of how much they could
Right.
really help her and what it would mean for her going forward.
Yeah, it's just like when someone says, like, it's kind of cultish, like, give us your bank card, we'll pay off your debts, you'll be fine. And the sort of implication there is we'll control you because we'll control your purse strings, and your debt transfers to us in a way.
Yeah, and
so
and I think their experience also of having been controlled and taken advantage of. I think they were more protective of their independence than they would have been otherwise. I mean, I guess I don't know if I want to like cover their whole story, but I'll just kind of summarize that. 'Cause, I mean, I thought that was interesting. You're kind of like, well, how does because they start out as they had a normal childhood, like a happy childhood, a normal like Dutch like children basically, but it was Louise who basically fell in love with the wrong guy, and after they got married he turned violent, starting abusing her, but she was like stuck in that abuse cycle where she still loved him and so stayed with him, and then he essentially like forced her into prostitution for him,
and then
like,
well he
kind of ended
also
up being her
leveraged the
pimp.
kids against her.
Yeah, and then and so yeah, they had 3 kids. The kids got taken got taken away by the state, and another thing that's not touched on by the documentary at all is that her sister Martine also had 4 kids. You don't learn that at all from the film, and maybe it's because she didn't feel comfortable talking about it and didn't want to get her kids involved. And her kids were also taken away because in another interview where they were both interviewed together, they were like, well, it's kind of hard to get the story straight because they would each interject with the same story. So they had a very, very, very similar experiences. But so Louise was forced into it, and then Martine just needed a job, so she ended up working like cleaning up at the brothel that her sister was working at, and then because she was there and around it, she got kind of sucked into it. But what got them through it is that they were in it together, and they kind of picked each other up and watched each other's backs, and they eventually got away from their bad relationships and took control. And I think a lot of it too is that, I mean, it's a little forced sometimes, but I think they really do like have bubbly personalities and kind of look at the glasses half full kind of thing. And yeah, and they're kind of adorable. But yeah, the other thing I want to mention is the filmmakers got surprising access to where that they actually filmed when they had clients, which they called, what was their word for clients? I thought it was like kind of funny. Like,
But the like
I'd never
good
heard of it.
men or no.
Well, they said they were good men's and bad boys or whatever. No, but there was a specific word they used for like our equivalent of Johns or
John.
whatever. But it was some word I'd never heard before. I'll try to think of it. But yeah, so they got access to when they had clients there, and it's like not at all.
No holds barred.
It's no hold barred, and it's totally like sad. And like again, not sexy at all. And half the time you're kind of like, what are these dudes like paying for? Like that part was like very interesting and strange. I mean, the whole thing's a bit surreal.
I don't know. That's like what they kind of explain too, that like a lot of these guys are their age
Yeah.
and are attracted to women their age. And so, maybe they don't want to be with like some live thing that makes them feel way too old.
Yeah.
And then there's like there's that kind of dynamic. Maybe their spouse, who knows what happened? Their spouse is dead, or they again have been coming to these women since they were
They're regulars.
young.
Yeah,
And
there
that's
a lot of them are regulars. I think also like she seems to specialize in like kink.
Yeah.
Like
So
the
there's a little
spanking
like
and all that.
kink, and so within that too, you could have like fetishists who are into older women, or
Yeah.
have like a grandmother fetish or something.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's the other interesting thing. They really like don't focus on a lot of that. Like you can really tell, like the filmmakers were really trying to focus more on kind of the more maybe the lighter, more positive
Right.
aspects. And again, I read in an interview that
Well, I
was
feel
kind of
like
what
they were
aimed for.
concentrating kind of on the mundanity of it all, because they don't concentrate on the couple, on the ladies, because there's a lot of information that you don't get, which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think is a little unfortunate, or maybe even just a little misleading. Maybe, I don't know. It's how you look at it.
Who were the filmmakers, Jules? And do you know like how they got in touch or how this story came to
So
be?
I did hear that I think so it was two filmmakers, Rob Schroeder and Gabrielle Provas, and I think what I read is that she tended the one of the sisters, I think it was Martine, tended the garden in his neighborhood.
Oh wow!
And so they met through that, and then I think he sort of was, like thought like, hey, this is an interesting story, and was kind of persistent. And eventually, she's like,
I see.
okay, let's do it. And then, but there was also, it turns out they were actually working on their memoirs during the filming, and they released their memoirs shortly after. So I think it was mutually beneficial. It was like for them, like I think the attention they got was mixed. I mean, I think it got them a little more understanding and respect from a lot of people, and fame in a positive way, I think. But then, again, for her family, that was maybe not a little tough. Like, especially, I don't think their grandchildren knew what they did. And so that kind of, so, it was definitely a risk for them. But I think their memoir ended up selling pretty good. So hopefully it helped them out financially.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that because they live in this sort of apartment building, they live near one another, that they kind of gab about the people in their building. Some of them are just like shitty people.
Yeah.
Like elbowing them, calling them whores, like being pretty, like basically you get that there's a bubble that there is their world, and then there's like this outside world, which again, some of it's intrusion of like the missionaries, and some of it's intrusion of these people who like it's not super clear what the view of the outsider is to this women or this practice. Like it's like something that is part of, I mean, it's like it's a classic, like Amsterdam red light district is an old sort of
concept.
Yeah.
An old theme.
Because it was, it certainly accepted for a long time and then legalized, and, because of the legalized marijuana and all that stuff. I thought that culturally they were more, or morally more progressive, but I was surprised. I mean, you get hints in the film that there's still a lot of, you're still looked down on big time. And, definitely like their families were like horrified, and, nobody wants that in their family. So it's, and then again, through the interviews, I learned that from the filmmakers that it was like way more horrible than even they thought, that they got a lot of abuse and a lot of name calling and stuff. So it's not, even though it's legal, I think it's more of like an institutional, like we know it's just a better way to handle it, but they still, most people still look down.
stigmatized,
Yeah,
right,
exactly. It's
And
not like, it's
not-
not just like any other job.
It's not as if legalizing it suddenly made it, everyone okay with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess too, you have it's a homogenous society, and so when you have like race homogeny, your class disparities and sort of like classist conflicts come into sharper like contrast. So if you have people who are maybe lower income, or living in a lower class bracket, and have a job that is lower class, then you're gonna, they're the ones who are looked down upon. They're the ones who are like going to be spat on and oppressed. And
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff too comes from religion. Like, and I think it's still pretty Catholic country and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, compared to the religious fervor of a lot of other places, I mean, you got to imagine, right? I mean, Northern Europe, Northern Western Europe, this has got to be less influenced by the church than most places in the world, don't you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think people are, still. I mean, I think it's just where those ideas come from and are sustained. But so I mean, I guess it's just to say that I don't think the view of sex workers in the Netherlands is that much more is that different than here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's legal, you have a few more protections. But I was also surprised to learn that, I mean, at least in their opinion, things went downhill after the legalization because she actually said that like it's kind of like it's legal, but it ends up being run by a lot of shady people.
It's like the bosses kind of thing.
Yeah. And then it also like kind of opened the floodgates because anybody could start doing it. And they ended up in Amsterdam kind of scaling it back and forcefully shutting down a lot of places because it was just getting out of control. Like the red light district, they weren't closing it, but it was just growing. And I mean, and part of that too, the other problem is just because it's one of the few places where it is legal, then if it was legal everywhere, then people wouldn't be coming from, I think the fact that the red light district
wouldn't be a draw.
Right. Yeah, like the red light district, it's a place that like tourists go to and things like that.
What I thought was, there were a lot of interesting things, but I thought it was kind of funny that there was like a little store window.
Yeah.
Like a little shop window that like, oh, here's this one, and you can walk down the street. There's another, there's another.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of a.
That's how it is. I mean, I went to Amsterdam and that's the red light district. It's been like that for a long time.
That's wild.
And they have red lights in all of them. That's why it's.
You don't have to turn on
weird.
the red light.
But the other funny thing is that big window front thing is just standard, like the kind of traditional architecture there, and which I think is very strange because I remember we were just like would be walking down the street and like they're like crystal clear glass panes and people are just like having dinner and like it just felt weird. Like I felt like I was invading people's privacy or that they were on display. There's just a lot of apartments like that. So I think
there's a lot in New York like that. It's just that those turned into storefronts over time. It's funny in the East Village when you walk around. That's still a common thing for fortune tellers to be like in the window in this little kind of compartment. And you can imagine that at one time that was a living space and it would have had that big window right there.
Mm-hmm. And a red light.
Well, no, I mean if it was just a regular residential in the yellow light district.
It was interesting how it, like, on one hand, it was like, I'm glad it didn't have like, it wasn't trying to push a message at you or anything. But yeah, it does omit a lot of information, which is kind of, that's why I kind of asked you who the filmmakers were, because it had a slight like amateurish feel to it or something, or just
it really is like a style of documentary. And I think, and again, like I sort of, and it comes from, there was an era in documentary, like it started with cinema verite and then direct cinema, where it was, and that's kind of what ended up kind of defining documentary in a lot of people's minds, that it's this sort of pure objective art form because you're not, the filmmaker is not being involved. But then over time, people realize that's just a bunch of BS. Like, of course, you're making all these editing choices.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it's like, well, you're just going to have to film them for like 90 days straight or something. Like, if you want to be as pure as possible. Or like that line, or it's a slippery slope or something. I don't really know how you can pretend that's like, it's an arbitrary point.
Right, and in a way, it's kind of dishonest because you're trying to pretend like you're not in the film, but you're there with a camera all the time, which is weird, and
affect
changing
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And they
even the choice of where you point the camera is a statement. Is you make as the filmmaker.
You're choosing the eye. Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of it's a style. But I and that's where too I feel like it really takes, it's a lot of work in the edit room to find, because you end up just with a lot of random stuff and just finding the story and making something sort of cohesive. And this, sort of gets there, but not totally.
Mm-hmm. Has anyone made like what's the like machine learning, the thing where you like put in a bunch of data and it spits out like a string of, that, like you could take like a database of
machine learning.
Yeah, it's machine learning, and then you output it, but then you output like a thing that could be like, hey, we're going to put all of Trump's tweets in, and the program is going to spit us out like a Trump tweet that it's made, a unique one using what it's learned from all this stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if you like built like a system where there were just cameras everywhere and all this data flowing into this machine, and you taught it like faces, and you taught it like to recognize more motion and like sound, and like then just like basically like, could you create like a true documentary cinema verite of like of tracked footage.
I think you'll might be able to get there at some point, but I feel like it'll always be a little weird because so much of it is subtle. Like what makes something work or not
Just gotta
work.
teach a machine. What's
I mean,
Yeah.
they
Learning machine.
they haven't gone there yet, but I mean, there's such a trope. Like, I mean, we do live in a world where everything is videoed, and there's
Yeah.
actually a documentary that was just released this year.
the road movie?
Yeah, exactly. Remember that, and it's all made from Russian. So in Russia, there's, and probably a lot of people know this already, but everybody has dash cams. I think for like legal protection,
Insurance purposes.
yeah, for
too,
insurance
yeah.
purposes. And so thousands of hours of dash cam footage has been recorded, and therefore these cameras have accidentally captured all these incredible things. And they started popping up on YouTube, and then people started making, what's the word?
Compilation.
Yeah, compilations of them. And then this guy essentially made a documentary that's a giant
It's like a
compilation of these.
67-minute movie
Wow.
called The Road Movie.
Yeah, and it's just all these incredible, happenings through the lens of a dash cam.
With
And
Viggo Mortensen.
Mm-hmm.
Does Tosh.0 talk over him? Like,
no,
Yeah.
no, he doesn't. That's what makes it, a documentary.
that's what
that's
makes
in
it
film
artsy?
festivals.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
And
I mean,
no one
it's
is
a little-
talking over it except, but it's. I'm sure it's the.
There's just
editing,
like it's
how it's put together. Is what makes it
tastefully presented, and you just have the like like real slow, subtle, like
was any of
That
it? Did
does
any of the
remind
footage
me
of
that- that the music in Meet the Falcons is kind of irritating.
yeah.
And
Well-
very like again like like a
Well,
lot
during
of
the
accordion
sex scenes,
music.
there's like a oompa band stuff.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, not safe for work. But I was watching it at work.
Not
In
safe
a
for
children's
life.
network.
I was
Oh,
watching it
yeah.
on the subway and I was like, I think I need to stop watching it on the subway. That's when I was like, oh, they're showing that. Okay.
And with my two monitors, I'm kind of like keeping my eye on one while working. And then when that was, I kind of did a double take. Oh my gosh! And I had to like switch my browser real quick. Like,
yeah, all of a
What
sudden
you looking
all
at,
of a sudden
Steve?
you heard me, and you're like, oh, what's that sound? Whoa!
Like, oh, the batteries are dead on this one.
Yep.
I'm going to use this
This
one.
one's really old.
Flew, flew, flew.
Yeah, that's when I was like, I don't know. That seems like amateur hour. She doesn't seem like a pro to me.
They also like, I don't know. There's literary references to like the old whore's trick or the old mare's
Yeah,
trick or
yeah.
whatever. And it was pretty interesting to hear them like matter of factly being like, these girls don't know how to like
Any of the tricks, they just let themselves
Get worn
used
down.
up.
yeah.
They don't know any of the ways to trick men into thinking they're having sex with us.
It was pretty amazing.
I would love. That's a documentary unto itself. the fake sex.
So when she kept saying to the other lady across the street, like, you don't learn the language, was that, I had assumed she was just kind of being a little mean, but what were you saying? She was trying to help them to, like, if you learn the language, you can get help or something? What was that?
They have a little bit of like that old, not like xenophobe, but like old person in their ways. Like in our day, there aren't any
Yeah.
more old women on the street anymore.
Yeah.
They're just these young kids who don't even speak the language.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's, I think, a little of that. Like they're probably being motherly, but also kind of being like,
that's what I
Pedro, you could mow my lawn, but you'll do a lot better if you
Yeah.
speak the language.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that attitude.
Okay, I
While
mean, that's
he's
what
like-
I thought, but
while
I
he
thought
rolls
that you
his
had mentioned
eyes.
something.
Rolls his eyes and services his clients.
Mows their lawn.
Yep.
But another funny thing is when you're just listening and kind of keeping your eye on it, there's a bunch of times when you just hear them going, yeah, like,
Yeah,
like
yes.
just agreeing with each other so much
Yes.
that it really draws you right to it. You're like, oh, they're in bathing suits.
Oh, this is about the title. So the title is like a Dutch slang that's like wife chatter. It's kind of, it's like, and so, but
Oahoran?
it really means like old whore. But
Mm.
like if you directly translate it, it's old whore. But the phrase
it has
is like
evolved.
wife chatter, which in turn, in a larger way, means like nonsensical chit chat.
Mm.
So I mean, it's a very like loaded term, but
Mm.
to kind of get into the playfulness of these two women kind of just going chatting with each other and, being sisters who are very familiar and have had all these experiences together, just kind of getting a slice of their life. It's an interesting word to use for that, because it encompasses like a lot of those pieces of things, and then is also a look at all the various aspects of that and why those are loaded and problematic.
Mm-hmm. These ladies were super charming, and you really started to, I don't know, it was kind of fun, but I guess it all in all, the documentary kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because I left it going like, but there's so much stuff that you didn't, like, I need to know to make this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess that always bothers me when I watch a documentary or something, and I'm just like, I mean, I guess it's not their job to inform me or to keep me satisfied, but I always feel like if you're trying to shed light on this thing, shed light on it instead of, in a vacuum, like just turn the flashlight on and follow these people without giving any more context.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is more like a character study, this one, and I think they were kind of trying not to be, not to be, oh shoot, what's the word?
Didactic or
or
prescriptive.
Yeah, or just one of those,
pedantic.
No, it's not the word, but that's all right. You guys take it
Bubonic.
away.
Yeah.
iconic.
Phlegmatic.
Yeah. Astrophysic.
That was it. Astrophysics.
Stigmatic.
No.
Yeah.
Douchey.
Poochie.
They didn't want. It wasn't about an issue. It was about people.
Right.
Political was the word. you were looking
Okay,
for.
political.
Yes, maybe.
Sorry.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know
yeah,
what I was looking for.
It was interesting that, so they chiron the two women early on, very small chirons.
Yes.
And then there's a few conscious choices.
It's like an RPG where you hover over the character to get the name.
And then they just quickly give up because they're like, "What's the point?"
Well, I think
they look alike,
but
they
I think
sound
that's
alike.
intentional.
They're
Like
always filling
they want
each
you to
other's
be like,
sentences.
yeah, okay, there's this person. Good luck. Like they're the same person.
Yeah.
At some point, and then on top of that, they don't show photos of them as young until well into the documentary. So you don't. Like they may have hinted at some of their past, but they don't really get into, because this whole time, I was thinking like, okay, so these people have been doing this for a long time. What did they look like when they were younger? And, how does that work? And all, just like where did they come from is in your mind, but then you're almost like, well, they're never going to show it. They're just going to show this. And then when they do, it's a interesting surprise. And then they take it and make it like clearly that was a different life entirely. Like and show in shades how it shifted into where they are now.
And it's a total editorial trick to keep you interested because, they kind of hold that off, and then you, like you said, you kind of give up on it. Then boom, there it comes, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden something new is happening and different. And
Superman will fly.
Yeah. And they were pretty, I like how Matt, it's like the nurse character in Romeo and Juliet, just like truly like women who nurse babies all the time and deal with sex all the time are going to be earthy and
matter of fact.
And these two women who like it's their job to most efficiently and with their own joy in it, get people off and, please their clients. And this sort of like trade talk and sort of like stuff they found amusing.
Old war stories.
Yeah. And even be like, oh, he was packing.
Yeah.
Like they're just kind of like giggling to themselves about that, or like teasing each other.
I had him wear my dress.
Yeah. Like
and it turns out,
he was into it. Yeah. Or like, I started riding rods early. Like,
yeah.
They're
really funny. And they're always laughing. And, yeah.
It's like our stories about working together back in the day.
All right. Light district.
Yeah, I would just stand in that door in the cage like it was the window, and just looking out the street, screw in a little red light bulb.
Yeah,
make a few extra bucks.
Compete with the tiny instrument
guitar
store.
Yeah.
You wear like your little thumb wrestlers.
Would you like to try my flute?
Oh, I was just wearing the one thumb wrestler, nothing else. You know where.
On your thumb.
So do we have any more to say about?
So I guess just to clear it up.
When does Robert De Niro come in?
Oh.
Just to clear it up though, so I saw it on Vimeo and it was like called a Worden or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess I was a little confused by that. So in Amsterdam it's called Oorden, but in America it's called Meet the Fockins.
It had
Yes.
both,
That's
it had
why
both
it's-
titles in
So
the.
because I thought, was
Yeah,
it a subtitle? Like a colon?
No, it's like the original title, and I think it was I think Meet the Fockers had come out recently,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
was just
okay.
a good marketing ploy.
Oh, how old is this then?
2012,
Oh, okay.
like that's when it got released here, so it's not that old, but it's
No.
old enough.
Because haven't they? I mean, basically, I don't know too much about this, but wasn't there some other thing where they were basically saying that Amsterdam was trying to make it so that you couldn't partake in like the marijuana or hash or any of that stuff, and maybe not even the red light district if you were not a native of the country, like a non-citizen.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that's possible because all those people coming there to smoke weed.
No, but
They may have
like a
crushed
hash
it, but I
bar.
think there was
it's
like
more
a,
on the selling end.
right.
But I think it's because they just had a lot of people come there to get into that business. They didn't like it so much.
Came to this country with a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a little bit of
taking it away from me.
real life corner. I've only been to the airport in Amsterdam, and one time I visited Italy, and my connection flight was in Amsterdam, and it flew back to Boston. And when I was just out of college and scruffy and whatnot. When I got off the plane, the dude was like checking my passport. He's like, "Oh, Amsterdam, huh? Fellas, come over here." And like two drug dogs sniffing all my stuff. It was
You did look the part at the time.
yeah, but also I was just like, does it say on there that I literally was only in the airport of Amsterdam? That should be notified. It should be.
I don't
Some
know
kind
what
of qualifier.
I don't know what you can get at the airport. There might be some
Yeah,
selection.
maybe.
Yeah,
Right.
the ABPs there are pretty sick. The Annie-Ann.
With the aliens versus predators.
Oh, bon bon.
When I though when I was in Amsterdam, there was a dude who was trying to bring onto the plane this giant like hunting knife that I guess he got in Germany or something.
Oh god.
Because and they were like, "Sir, how did you even get that here? Like that's got to be in your like pack." They made him like give it up.
Oh man.
He didn't just like.
It doesn't suck. You shouldn't be able to have that.
I have dishonored my family.
He just like stabs it
I've
into himself and like.
Dishonored the TSA.
All right, I'm good. Consider it packed. Carry on.
Carry on, my wayward son.
Now
Yeah.
you're getting blood everywhere.
Yeah. So where can people watch again?
So
Vimeo.
you can rent it on Amazon and iTunes and all that. But I did find a link to it for free on Vimeo, but I don't know how long it will be there.
Oh, but this one is not also on Netflix.
Correct. it
No,
is not.
it's not. It's not on any of the free streaming or like streaming sites. It's
Okay.
just
Right.
for rent or sale.
Yeah, pay up.
Good pick, Jules.
Good job,
Good
Jules.
pick, Jules.
Best, the best.
How did you learn about this before we leave? How did you just it was just
Pornhub.
Just Googling,
yeah, just googling like naked old ladies, old lady kink.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
No, it's in the dark web, I think.
Yeah, that is dark web.
Well, when you're mining garlic coin, you got nothing better to do.
Well, let's just say
Yeah.
I visited Amsterdam.
Yeah,
Got
after
it.
a long day in the garlic coin mines,
Yeah.
you need a release.
Sorry, moving on.
We're not going to kink shame anyone on this show.
Nope.
Kom eraan hoor. Heb je me gehoord? Oh, braaf zo. Zo. Nee, die trilt. Oh, maar dat is een mooie. Nou, die trilt ook. Dat is veel beter. Kijk, zo op de penis.
Such a question, there are right and there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of New to You Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week was myself. You can find me on Instagram at board_ghost and on Twitter at Lord Joho. You can find my podcast about book club stuff at woundandStab.com. You can find my RPG podcast at boardghost.com. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me and myself at earthlingkeith.com.
All right.
And Jules?
You can find me at Beautiful Jules on Twitter and Instagram. How about you, Adam?
You can find me at atomator.com.
All right.
And you'll have to check out our website for how that's spelled.
Yeah, we're not going
Mater.
to try.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, it's not a long
it's like
name.
the
I'm
car
not going
from
to try.
Cars.
Yeah. Voiced by Larry the Cable
Yeah,
Guy.
Mater.
Yes.
hmm I'm the truck.
Mater.
All right. So who's got something new to them this week? Is that you, Keith?
I got some stuff
right.
new to me. What's new to me is that I'm going to have a baby girl my wife is in August. And the due date is my sister's birthday, so that's kind
Congrats.
of cool.
We'll have to have an
Congrats, man. That's
episode
awesome.
after she's born, and you can review her.
I
and
will.
We'll see.
I will review
Yeah.
it. I'll be like, oh, I liked it, but it was a little stinky. But another new thing to me is I've been reading the book that everyone has already read like 8 years ago called The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And boy, does it live up to the hype. It's really great. It makes me wish I was more informed on the artists at the time to see how many of these names are, actual name drops of real historical figures and how many of them are fictitious. And it's just really neat. It makes me want to learn about, the neighborhoods that they mention and just all those things. Very well written book so far. I'm about almost halfway through and just really loving it.
Do you want to give like a brief synopsis for the listeners?
Sure. For those of you who haven't read it, it's about a fictitious couple of comic book creators who, in the conceit of the book, have created this really popular Superman-esque comic book franchise called The Escapist. That's the other thing that reading it, I'm just like, I wish this was real. I really wish there were these comics that I could go back and read. It's just done so lovingly. There's some immigrant story stuff in there that's really good, and some sad stuff, and
it follows them like throughout most of their lives, and so there's a lot of different chapters in their lives that are, and a lot of surprises in there and interesting stuff. It's great.
And it's
Great
kind of
read.
it's like a composite too, right? Like because it follows a lot of the path of
It's
based
on a lot of real
Joel
people.
Schuster, right? The guy who created Superman and all those guys who were like New York based, maybe like Jewish immigrants and dealing with the anti-Semitism in Europe and all that sort of stuff. And America. Yep.
It's just written in a voice that I just find to be so pleasant. It's just there's just enough ornamentation to make it just really great. I find every page has about 4 words for me to look up at least. It's just really cool. It's just a really eye-opening book, and I love that it was well acclaimed when it came out. I'm sure it's going to be a movie, or they're trying to make a movie or something.
There's definitely escapist comics they've made since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, wow.
What I like is that when something is that popular, and I always kind of wait for the hype to die down, but I like it when it pays off. I'm just like, oh, good, this did deserve it. This
Yeah.
And now
really
no
is
one
good.
wants to talk about it with you.
Yeah, exactly.
We read it years ago.
Yeah, like eventually you can watch Star Wars when all the hype dies down. People are kind of over it.
Yeah.
Did you read?
No, I've never
It's
read
Michael
it.
Chabon or Chabon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Chobani.
Yeah.
He's yogurt of the yogurt
Mhm.
family.
You should check it out. Adam. You should read it. I'm at the point where I could reread it because I've forgotten most of it.
The silly thing is I wouldn't have even read this if like I went to the store to buy Dune and they didn't have it, and I'm just like, fine, I'll read this book that my wife told me I should read. But thank you, honey. It's great.
And it's available on most platforms. Is it on Audible?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
I imagine it probably
Yeah,
is. I imagine it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
it was such a blockbuster that I assume it is.
Yeah, I feel like it's been optioned and they've tried to make movies of it.
I have a
few
feeling
times.
it's in. Somebody said it's in like development limbo or something.
Yeah, it sounds right.
And it would be tough to adapt that into a film. I think.
Really?
I think so.
They made Inception. Like they can make anything.
It's just so sprawling. I think you would have to leave.
Love that soundtrack. from
That's
Inception.
right.
I think you would have to leave too much out.
Oh, I was making the sound of the lady's toy.
Oh, they just
I
took
wasn't
that.
doing the sound of the
Well,
trailer
that-
from
well, that-
Inception.
Well,
No, the
that's how they made.
trombones.
That's how they made that sound. They just slowed it down.
Yeah, they slowed it down.
This one needs more batteries.
Do you think if you have a dream within a dream, you meet the Falcons? That's his Leo DiCaprio.
That's why you never leave.
Horror.
Yeah.
Your toppen is spinning.
Turn into the Swedish chef.
Ay.
Hey.
All right. So, Cavalier and Clay, Michael Chabon.
Yeah, check it out.
Do it.
It's a big book. It's kind of a long read, but it
a
flows
good one.
very fast,
Yeah.
and the language is awesome. Exhaustively researched, I'm assuming. If not, the guy's just making up a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of there. Like I said, there's a bunch of composite characters that he's
Mhm.
sort of drawing from and from that time. All right, gang.
Yep.
Are we good?
You
I
were
think we're
Who's,
good.
who's up
Next
next
week. We got Adam Mater.
Yeah.
All right.
He's going to be telling us all about something cool.
What are you telling us about, Adam?
Oh God. The Hang the DJ episode of Black Mirror season 4.
All right. Season 4, was it like the third episode?
I
What
don't
is
know.
this?
I think
Some
it's the
episode
fourth
in
or
season-
fifth episode.
Yeah.
Cool.
Deep in.
All right.
Cool.
So we'll get in there. Gang, see you next week. It may not be new, but
Explosion sound.
Yeah.
Bork, bork, bork.
Bork me. Bork the focus.
It's all about the music. This pitiful life is 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 all about the music.
With him together forever. Without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate